Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. I'm your host, Chris Noble. And today we have a really interesting guest, Dana Miccucci. She is an award winning author, speaker, healer, and mentor whose work beautifully bridges ancient mystery school wisdom with modern spiritual awakening. She's the author of The Third Muse, a metaphysical time travel novel exploring divine feminine wisdom and the Magdalene lineage, and Sojourns of the Soul, a Nautilus award winning spiritual travel memoir inspired by journeys to sacred sites all around the world. That's a big thing we're going to be talking about today are the sacred sites, all the incredible experiences Dana's had there, and her wisdom to share, not just about these sites, but how to interact with these sites, how to gain healing and information and knowledge through these sites. There's so much we're going to talk about today, but a little bit more about Dana. So she has decades of background as a journalist with the New York Times and other major publications. So she brings a grounded clarity to deep spiritual themes, which we really appreciate here on this show, as you guys know. Through her teachings, retreats, and healing work, she helps others awaken to higher consciousness to reconnect with soul purpose and move towards wellness, joy, and fulfillment. So without any further ado, let's welcome Dana to Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Dana, how are you doing today?
Fine. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me on your show.
It's such a pleasure. And as we were just talking before we started to record, we've got so much to talk about with the sacred sites. You know, that's obviously a huge passion of mine. And obviously it's a huge passion of yours. So
Yes.
I would just love to know right off the bat, what was the catalyst for you? What got you into going to these sacred sites outside of, I'm sure, what the mainstream and what normal people, want to go to Egypt to take a couple of fun
Sure.
selfies of the pyramids. But you and I both know there's a lot more going on than just a fun selfie.
So true, Chris. And yes, this goes way back. I was reflecting on this earlier today again, way back to my time as a young journalist in New York City. I now live in Taos, New Mexico, but I spent a good part of my adult life in New York City as a freelance journalist, and I wrote about culture, travel, and spirituality. And I realized that I was choosing topics that would take me to these sacred sites, even though the articles were about culture and travel. Like you said, so much more happens within us. And I was having so many mystical insights and revelations and a lot of personal growth through my travels. And then I just couldn't get enough. So, what initially started as assignments as a journalist writing articles became something much more than that. And I'm still traveling. I left journalism behind years ago, but I'm still traveling, and I call myself as an ambassador of the New Earth consciousness. And so, sacred sites way back when, from Egypt to Cambodia to the Australian outback to Peru to the sacred Maya lands in the Yucatan, for example, or some of the Tibet, some of the sites I visited and initially wrote about in my spiritual travel memoir that you mentioned, called Sojourns of the Soul, One Woman's Journey Around the World and into Her Truth. And that was because I had gained so much more knowledge, a lot of self-knowledge, in addition to my learning about various wisdom traditions and ancient wisdom and mysteries at all of these sites. And I had to put it into something bigger than a magazine article. So I wrote that book, The Spiritual Travel Memoir, Sojourns of the Soul. It did win a gold medal in the Nautilus Book Awards. And that was really my first foray into putting this out into the public in a big way. And then fast forward to now, that book came out in 2011. I recently wrote a sequel to Sojourns of the Soul, which is called The Years of Living Dangerously, Lessons from the Front Lines of a 21st Century Lightworker. Came out in October, end of October. And this kind of takes Sojourns to a whole new level because it's about my experiences leading groups to sacred sites around the world and on what I call ascension missions or assignments. And it's all about the tests and trials I encountered doing this work, bringing my light work in to the public, even in a much bigger way. And Of course, about my ongoing inner transformation, as well as the many miracles that happened as a result of this light work. So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, how I became fascinated with sacred sites, going way back decades, until the present time. So I'm still traveling, still enjoying these sites.
And as you should be, right? That's
Yes.
something we want to be doing forever. You know, when you first went to some of these sacred sites, when I go to them, I get this overwhelming feeling of excitement, of familiarity, even though I've never been there before, and it just feels differently than when I go to a normal place and with a building. What do you think's going on there? We've talked on the show before about earth
Yeah.
energies, about the construction of these sites and how they augment these energies, but maybe they're also connecting to cosmic energies and so on and so forth. There's so much more going on. Dana, what do you think is happening at these places that produces such profound transformation?
Yes, that's so true, Chris. And a lot of these sites are located at the intersection of electromagnetic ley lines. People may have heard of ley lines that crisscross the earth and imbue these sites with great power. So, for example, some of the sacred sites many people know about would include the Great Pyramid of Egypt, Machu Picchu in Peru, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the great cathedrals of Europe. They Sites like this were intentionally built at these powerful energetic vortexes to raise the vibration or frequency of all those who came into contact with them. So the ancients were well aware of the powerful energies emanating from the ley lines. Some of the major ones being in the UK. We've heard of the Michael and Mary ley lines. There's an Apollo and Athena ley line. And these ley lines intersect all over the planet. This goes all the way back, Chris, to ancient Atlantis, where the system of energy lines the Atlanteans used as energetic highways, okay, for transport and communication. They were well aware of these energetic lines. And this connection with it's really part of the earth grid, okay? And this connection extends way out into the cosmos at the same time that it's rooted deeply into Mother Earth. And so it's a vast energy system similar to the acupuncture meridians and chakras, or energy centers. There are different words for them in different wisdom traditions of the human body. And it extends way out into the cosmos, and then comes back in through the polar upper atmosphere, and then into the earth plane. So when we go to these sacred sites, it's not as if we have to, quote, do anything. Simply being present, focused at our heart centers, being free of distractions, with a pure and clear mind and heart, you automatically receive these energies from Mother Earth and the cosmos. And in that sense, I always say in my talks and workshops that we kind of serve as human acupuncture needles, bridges, connecting heaven and earth, because we receive and transmit light at these sacred sites. And like you said, it's very exciting. You get this kind of tingling. It's almost like putting your finger into an electrical socket, right? It's a huge activation. And there are so many benefits, gifts available to us at sacred sites. And one of them is, of course, an energetic upgrade, an activation. Some believe that even one's DNA changes at sacred sites, which would include crop circles, by the way. And we can receive healing on every level: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. We can receive a recalibration, a clearing, a purification, often receive mystical insights and have incredible revelations simply because we showed up. But like I say, with a pure and clear heart and mind. And so much of it is setting your intention for what you wish to receive.
It's just so true, Dana, and you're making me recount on an experience I had in 2018 when I went to
Mhm.
South Africa and stayed with Michael Tellinger in his Stone Circle Museum for 2 weeks, and we went all around the eastern part of South Africa and up to Zimbabwe a bit, researching the ancient stone circles of that part of the world, and most people, including South Africans, don't know that their country has over, well, like, millions of these stone circle patterns that are shaped like cymatic patterns, how
Wow.
sound is created visually when it vibrates through different materials. So the long story short was that we went to one of the sites called Adam's Calendar. Just so happens to
Mhm.
be exactly on the same longitude or latitude. I always get them mixed up, but the north south, um, basically right south of the Great Pyramid of Giza on the exact same line.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we were there and we went in, it was just 12 of us, but we set an intention, like you were mentioning, very important. And I don't even remember how old I was at the time. I was thinking I was 29 or something. And I didn't know I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a protocol, but we omed 3 times. We set our intention and we walked into the stone circle, and all of us had an experience. All of us had an individual experience, and all of us were crying at the end of it. And I had a transmission from someone that came to
Right.
me in that moment and told me, like, hey, you gotta shift things in your life. And so I went back home after this trip, and I quit a 8-year business partnership, and
Wow.
got out of the corp and started a whole new life. And I switched everything in my life around after that moment. So yeah, these things
Right.
happen.
That's a huge transformation. And sometimes we're not even sure. We show up and then our whole life changes, And so I say that going to sacred sites is the fast path, the direct path on the ascension.
We like quick fixes in our current world,
Yes.
and this is actually a bit of a quick fix, even though
Yes.
it is and it isn't, because what I also think happens is it initiates you and it opens up a lot of these new parts of you. But that journey I went on after I got back, I mean, I technically went on that journey for the next several years, so
Wow.
it's still something that then, like, it was like a new chapter opened up. And that was my first experience really with sacred sites, and after that I was
Wow.
hooked, much like you, right?
You're hooked. It's intoxicating. It's like an addiction in a good way, Chris, right? So
Yeah.
you can't get enough. And yeah, and those experiences are life changing. They're markers in one's life.
And
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 so,
so yeah, no, sorry to interrupt you, Dana. I mean, it just makes me think, and definitely would love to ask you, what were your, let's say, it's hard to maybe sometimes find a favorite
mhm.
experience, but what have some of your more, let's say, more powerful experiences that you've had at sacred sites?
That's a great question, Chris. There have been so many, and I see that you're uh, in front of what looks like an Egyptian temple, and Egypt has, it feels like a second home to me. I've been there at least 5 times, and I've had very powerful experiences in Egypt. I feel that that's one place on earth where what I call the assemblage points of our reality, our consensus reality, are very loose. And the timelines are very fluid. A lot of these sacred sites, and especially Egypt, are extremely interdimensional. And I had some very powerful experiences in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. You mentioned the word initiation earlier, and that's exactly what these sites do. They are initiations into higher consciousness, higher wisdom, uh, a more evolved version of yourself. And the King's Chamber, as you probably know, was an initiatory chamber, a resurrection chamber. The pyramids, as history would like to tell us, were not burial places for the pharaohs. They were initiation chambers for adepts on the path of the ascension. And so, not only the Egyptian mystery school initiates, but initiates from all over the world came to Egypt and walked through its temples of light and transformation in a very focused way, and took various initiations in each of these temples. And the final initiation for these mystics was taken in the Great Pyramid, which for me is the initiation of mastery over matter. So we have, beings, avatars like Yeshua ben Joseph, Master Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Plato, Pythagoras, all of the Essenes. They went in to this resurrection chamber to, quote, die in life so they could more fully live. And I say, quote, die because it's a metaphorical death, to an older version of yourself so that you become reborn into higher consciousness. So Egypt for sure. And then I will say, I was reflecting on this today when I went to Machu Picchu in Peru. I've been there twice. I'm actually taking a group there this October. It will be my third time in Peru and my second time in Bolivia. But I wanted to say that when I was in Machu Picchu for this, I think it was the second visit, I had sprained my ankle on a mountainside in Bolivia right before I went to Machu Picchu. And anyone who's been there knows that there are many terraces and steps, and it's a lot of climbing to explore the beauty of that incredible mystical site built by the ancient Inca. And so I was under the impression that I had sprained my ankle. I had been limping for a while, and then I had a Bolivian shaman put some herbs around. I said, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. So I got to Machu Picchu. I had no pain. I was walking normally. I still had this wrap around my ankle, but it was as if nothing had ever happened. And then I came back to Taos, New Mexico, where I live now, went to see the doctor, and he said, I can't believe you did all this hiking and climbing. Your ankle is broken. So what happened is I feel that I kind of tapped in, to higher dimensions of light, moved beyond this earth plane so that I was able to transcend that 3D pain. And you could say that I received a healing there, even though the ankle, when I came back into a more dense place on earth, our daily lives, was actually broken. So that to me was a miracle, how I was even able to get around, let alone with no pain. So that's an example of a healing. And then the ankle healed very quickly, once I got back and found that out. Then I had some extreme miracles, I would say, in the Holy Land, and I've been to the Holy Land twice, and that was before, a lot of the chaos that we know is happening there now. But I went first with my husband, and we had some very miraculous events, and then went again where I took a group in 2018 to the sacred sites of the Holy Land to delve really into the Essene Mystery School, which I'm very close to. I've had ancient memories, a lot of very unexplained mystical events around that. Well, what happened, Chris, was on that first visit, I would wake up in the morning, and after you step out of the shower, the mirror is kind of fogged up with steam. And every single morning in this Jerusalem hotel room, what would appear in that steam fogged mirror was an outline of a perfect heart right beside an infinity sign. And then it would disappear, and it wasn't there. It was as if an invisible hand had drawn it. And this happened every morning on that trip. And I said to my husband, this is the theme of our journey and of our lives, which is infinite love. So then fast forward a few years later, when I took a group, I received the assignments from Spirit when I have to go on a mission and lead a group to these very sacred sites. It always has some type of planetary service work involved. And so on that journey, where we had meetings in one of the hotel conference rooms in a very deserted corridor of the hotel. Nobody knew why we were there. To anyone at that hotel, we were tourists, but there wasn't even anyone in this deserted corridor. And after our first meeting, when I was transmitting the Essene wisdom, we got there the next morning, and there was a perfect heart drawn on the black oak door, and the heart was in white ash. And I was just astounded, astounded. So these are just there's so many more miracles that I write about in my book, The Years of Living Dangerously, Lessons from the Front Lines of a 21st Century Lightworker, which people can get on Amazon. But there's so, what happens when you're at these sacred sites is you are so fully present that you've stepped outside of time and space into the eternal now that the great mystics talk about. You have a lived, felt experience of that. And what happens is that all of the dimensions collapse. There are no more veils. There are interdimensional bleed-throughs, and what I call miracles is seemingly the unexplained. So, of course, to me and other members of the group, we felt that it was our seen soul family reaching through the veils of time to communicate with us. And there were so many remarkable things that have happened on these journeys.
It's just so fun to hear, because it's also what I've experienced too, and it's just so
Yeah.
clearly, it's just something that happens when you take these intentions and you go intentionally to these sites, and there's just an infinite amount of possibility to happen. And I loved your story with the heart and the infinity symbol, infinite love. I mean, you can't make that up, right? Like, it's just,
No,
it's
you
too
can't make
perfect.
that up.
I love when that happens. It's so clearly, like, when we were in the King's Chamber, when I was there in 2019, I was with Dr. Robert Schock on that trip, and
Mhm,
a lot more scientists, a lot more logical minded people on that trip, which is fine, great,
mhm.
but not much on the metaphysical or spiritual side of it. And yet a lot of people, especially the most skeptical ones, actually were having full on, like, sacred geometry coming out of the walls at them, and feeling the presence of these, like, ascended masters behind them, or other
Right,
cloaked, initiates that were, like, creating a beautiful circle around us. Like, I felt I experienced more of a feeling of awakening. Like, when I walked out of the Great Pyramid, I literally felt like I had just walked into a new life. That's just
yes,
that's just what it felt like, though. I felt like reborn, like I just come out of the birthing canal from the Great
right,
Pyramid. But
yes,
what other people saw was straight up, like, visions and just incredible things. That is, I took even more of it more seriously, because it came from the logical, skeptical people that aren't into that. And then when they're seeing that, then I'm like, okay, something's really happening, right?
right. Right. And that's what's so, it, like, we call it the unexplained, but really, it is our birthright to experience what we call these miracles. And we are divine creator beings of infinite potential. And I feel, Chris,
Mhm.
that the sacred sites reflect back to us our immense divine power,
Mm,
you know,
yes. Yeah.
and that we're always connected to Spirit God, and we are infinite, uh, unstoppable, invincible beings. It's just that our culture, our institutions have kind of beaten that out of humans. It's like now we are regaining, we're reconnecting with that divine power, and it's so needed now, Chris, as we know.
Yep, it absolutely is. And yeah, we've come from a past of a lot of manipulation and suppression on every possible level, but we're moving into a new frequency now, and it really is our time, I think, to step into this power, and to reclaim, a lot of this wisdom and this power from the past, which is, I think, what happens at these sacred sites, is that remembrance. You know,
Yes.
that's what I felt in Egypt. I'm like, yeah, I know, I remember this. This is familiar, but then with that remembrance is, like, the responsibility of what we can do now to create this new
Right.
earth. And I feel that and you just said, when you do your trips and your tours, you get the call first before you do them, right? It's a
Right.
calling. Almost the same for me, doing this podcast, doing my trips
Sure.
and tours. I didn't plan on any of it, like, it was definitely
Right.
God, the universe, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, guiding the way on this, because it is the sites, in a way, were the ones telling me that this is what I had to do. And for our audience watching and listening, this is why we love the sacred sites. Talk about
Right.
guidance, and wisdom.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the veils, like I say, are non-existent, and that kind of that activation of what you said, of what's already present within you. It's like unlocking this puzzle, and it's so many aha moments, and
Yeah.
also connecting us more deeply with our gifts and how
Mm.
we can use them to be of greater service.
And one thing I experienced very profoundly, and my background's in music, I'm a musician, and
Mhm.
so and I love sound, anything to do with
Mm.
sound and frequency. And my music, I've niched into therapeutic music for the last 7 years now, and that a lot of that started when I was in the King's Chamber, and I got a download to start chanting inside the Great Pyramid. And again, we were not
Oh,
with the group that
wow.
normally would do that, but I got them all to do it, and then by the end of it, we're like 40 of us were all chanting, and
Wow.
that's when the psychedelic stuff started to really happen for everybody. So I was wondering if you could speak to the other aspect. Well, there's many aspects, but one of the
Yes.
major aspects of these sacred sites is sound and acoustics, right?
Yes. Yes. A sound really connects us to the vibration of the cosmos. Om is the rhythm of the cosmos, and whatever other sound you use, it's so important to tone and to how emit sound at the sacred sites, which raises your frequency and accelerates your ascension process, and realigns you with the sacredness of the site. I mean, there's nothing more powerful than sound. And who was it that was it Nikola Tesla who said everything is energy, vibration, sound. And in the beginning there was light and sound, right? And so these are the frequencies of creation. So emitting that sound automatically aligns you with the powerful energy coming up from Mother Earth, as well as all of the light, which is information coming from the cosmos into your crowns. So you become highly activated and really become one with the sacred site, I feel, through sound, and realize yourself as the sacred site moving through the world.
I love that, Dana, because that makes me think of the age old phrase, "Your body's a temple," right?
Yes.
And it is. And we need to
Yeah.
treat it as such, right? And that's another thing we gotta, as a collective, be extra focused on right now, is our health, first and
Right.
foremost, right?
Right.
Um, and I'm curious, on the side of sound, then brings in another aspect that I really
Mhm.
enjoy about these sites, which is architecture
Yeah.
and the way that these buildings are built. Just to give our audience a quick example, we're talking about the Great Pyramid. Let's use it again. So the Great Pyramid is using granite that's quarried 1,000 kilometers south down in Aswan, which we
Mhm.
went to as well to see the unfinished obelisk and all that, which I got to. So we went to the quarry to see where they were digging up all this
Mhm.
granite that built the Great Pyramid. So it's 1,000 kilometers away. The only way you're going to get that up and down is on the Nile, right? And then once you get to Cairo and the Giza Plateau, then you got to construct probably one of the most complex buildings ever built in the history of this planet, because
Right.
it's not only a four-sided pyramid, it's actually eight-sided. When you only can tell on the equinoxes and solstices, when the sun shines just at the right angle, that you can see there's an indentation. So they're actually slightly, ever so slightly indented on. So it's actually technically an eight-sided pyramid, which makes the
Wow.
construction a thousand times more complex. But then when we were inside, we had engineers with us, and they're using their lasers to measure the precision. The degree of error that the Great Pyramid was built to is still a higher standard than what we have today in regular construction, in what we give as a okay degree of error. They
Right.
were even more precise than how we build today. They're aligned to the north, south, east, west. It is all, there's all of these incredible mathematical things that go into the Great Pyramid. I could talk about for many episodes,
Wow.
but basically it's using granite that has a quartz crystal kind of quality. There's a type of crystal in this granite that also allows it to have a form of maybe either piezoelectricity, which is when we compress crystal together and it creates electricity, which is your
Right.
first watches, first radios. That's how they
Mhm.
were all powered. Are we looking at, with these ancient sites, do you think we're looking at incredibly advanced technology that was perhaps designed to just interact with consciousness. And so when we look at it today, because we're actually arguably more primitive than some of these ancients,
Right.
intellectually at least, what do you think these places, I guess more specifically, how do you think they knew to build the architecture in this way to also, manipulate sound, to manipulate consciousness? How did they understand that?
They were so advanced, Chris. And yes, everything you say is true. I'm going to close this blind because the sunlight is, I think, coming in, and I know you can edit that. So,
No, so we don't even need to edit it actually, because for our listening audience, I'll tell you right now, it looked like angelic light
oh,
shining over
good.
Dana,
Oh,
and it,
great. I'm
and it, it
glad.
was it was actually quite perfect for our
Oh,
super
okay.
sight.
Okay. So I put a stop to it, but I'm glad you saw it that way. Great.
Yeah.
So I, yes, they were incredibly advanced, the ancients. And when you were talking about the quartz, it was reminding me about the quartz and the electrical properties, because quartz transmits and receives energy and information, which is light. Okay, information and light are the same thing. And so, yes, I think that they intentionally built these sites to do this. We go all the way back to the ancient civilizations of Lemuria and Atlantis, and they had such advanced technology, and there were civilizations before that. Such advanced technology. They were very much aligned with and connected with their star families throughout the multiverse. The Arcturians, the Syrians especially, have played a big role in the development of our civilization, and as you know, worked with the Egyptians. It is said that sound, just getting back to that for a moment, was used to levitate those heavy stones to build the Great Pyramid and the other pyramids. I mean, they weigh tons. So it's sometimes, when you think about it, how could mere men have done this back then? So there had to be assistance from our space families, right? Our star families, and they were very well versed in the properties of the minerals on this earth. And some of these stones also have magnetite in them, which, interestingly enough, I discovered that there's also magnetite in the pineal gland. So that when we come into contact with the sacred sites, those built of stones with magnetite and quartz, as you were saying, it activates the pineal gland. So all of this, I do feel, was intentional. Now, there was some research released, I guess it was maybe last year. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe last spring, that you are probably aware of, where they found some structures underneath the Great Pyramid of Giza. They looked like tall cylinders, right? So to
Yeah.
me, it looks like a massive battery. And initially, my intuitive hit was, oh my goodness, this is technology from ancient Atlantis that was used to power these pyramids. That, because pyramids are energy generators, they're interdimensional communication devices, right? So I thought that was a very exciting discovery. And Chris, what we do know is that anytime that something like that is removed from the news cycle, which it was very quickly after those photos were released, it was, you didn't hear anything about it. It was just gone. So there
Yeah.
had to be a lot of truth to that. Do you
Well,
remember that?
absolutely. Oh, I remember very well. I was all over that. And we're going to be
Yeah,
going to see the Cafe Pyramid when we're there, in
good.
September, because we got to. I mean, after all that hoopla
Yes,
online that was happening. I mean, I know the
right.
news stopped circulating it, but the online world couldn't, and TikTok and all that stuff was just going
No,
crazy with it.
no.
But because it's so, Joe Rogan's talking about, everyone's talking about
Yes,
it at that point, and that's another sign that I see that we are moving into a beautiful new world, because the
right,
mainstream is at least talking about it and then taking it off. At least they're talking about it. And it's the same with
right.
extraterrestrials, UAPs, the rebranding of UFOs, and you
Yes,
just see that the mainstream is very, very slowly but surely opening up their mind and allowing perhaps more information to come out about all these things, because I think also they know just as well as you and I probably know is it's going to happen anyway. so,
It's going
so
to happen anyway, right? And there are enough people awake to all of this that it can't be suppressed. And the ancient mysteries, it's so wonderful that you have this podcast. I mean, so much is being revealed, and there's so much more to be revealed,
oh yeah.
about the ancient civilizations and how advanced they were, and the connection with all of the star beings who assisted us and seeded this planet.
And on
So,
that note, so this is a great segue because I'm really fascinated with,
mm,
and I hate to use the more mainstream term, but again, it's a sign that we're moving into new times, which
sure.
is a show like Ancient Aliens, and it's
Right.
what crazy over the top, sure, but they do touch on things that I think are worth talking about at the very
Sure.
least. And absolutely, of course, if we're just coming into the realization now that we're not alone in this universe, and once disclosure really happens, we'll be quite well aware that we are not remotely alone. And therefore, the first question is like, well, then wait a minute, we've never been alone.
Right.
And so, who are these gods and all these beings, these mythical beings that come up in history all the time? Who are
Right.
they? And so, from your perspective, and you're talking about the star beings, we clearly did have assistance with certain sites depending on where you were in the world. But in a general sense, Dana, what do you think has been the extraterrestrial influence with our species specifically?
Yes, and this gets into a whole other conversation, but I do feel that we were seeded by various races of star beings, and people talk about star seeds. We're all star seeds. There were some genetic experiments going on, but we're also the greatest show, I feel. Again, this is all intuited, Chris, right? Because there's not much physical proof, but I feel that planet Earth is the greatest show in the universe, if not the multiverse now, because we are a planet that is going through an ascension process. And I feel that our star families, many of us on the ascension path and light workers, anyone can be a light worker. It's not a special vocation, except in the sense that if you're doing this work consciously and publicly, you could consider it a vocation. But anyone who is of virtue with a pure and open heart and spreads light wherever they go is a light worker. And so I feel that, the Arcturians, the Sirians, the Andromedans, the Pleiadians, to name a few who are closer to this earth plane, there's so much evidence that they were here in the ancient times. And perhaps you remember going into the Egyptian temple of Abydos, which is devoted to Osiris, the temple of Seti the First, and it's an extremely transcendent place. Abydos is so, so mystical, and I can't get enough of it. And I feel that there's so many mysteries, especially buried inside that temple. And one of them is actually out there for everyone to see, where one of the hieroglyphics is a flying saucer. You could see it carved into one of the lintels in this temple in Egypt. So there are so many other depictions of star beings and flying saucers. You even go into the Aboriginal outback, and they have what they call the Mimi spirits and a lot of their petroglyphs showing these otherworldly beings. So I do feel like, for example, the Greek gods and goddesses, right, from Mount Olympus, I feel that they did once walk the earth. I feel that they all came from the stars. Isis and Osiris, I feel they came from the stars. Isis likely from Sirius, and that they did walk the earth, perhaps not as densely as we do, maybe more as energy beings. But why do we have all these quote myths? It's because these beings were real, and they came from the stars. And the Atlanteans, as I said, especially, and the Lemurians too, and they existed, their civilizations overlapped. Um, they were instructed by councils in these star systems, the Syrian High Council, the Andromedan Council. They played a great role in the governing of these ancient civilizations, and shared so much technology, and especially crystal healing technology, and so many of the healing modalities that came down through time came from our star families. So this is very exciting. And where I live, the sky is vast here in the desert, the high desert of northern New Mexico. And, I see ships all the time. And I, like to feel that as the epic battle between dark and light tips more towards the light, it may seem the opposite. Yes, in the physical world, it indeed does. And yet, in the higher dimensions, we have tipped towards the light. There is more and more light. So many of these beings are benevolent, and they have come to help.
100%, Dana. Thank you so much for that, because it's true. When I first got into this information, I was
Yeah.
focusing mostly on the negative. Where have
Uh-huh.
we been oppressed? Where have we been controlled? Where have
Right.
we been manipulated? Which is an important thing to, of course, research. But it led me to a solid depression for a moment in time, for sure,
Sure.
because you start to lose a little bit of hope. You're like, oh my goodness. But then you come into this new realization of, we're also very looked after. We actually have a lot
Yes.
of help. And I have a fun little story I like to share on that. I haven't really shared it on this podcast before, I don't think. Which is, there was a moment in 2012. Remember when we were all freaking out about 2012, the end of the world, right? It's the end of the Mayan
Right.
calendar. Well, what happened actually during the summer of 2012, July, is, and NASA confirmed it 2 years later, was that we had a massive corona mass ejection, so a CME from the sun going right towards our planet. And it was the level of CME that would wipe out our whole electrical grid and would pretty much end our civilization within a matter of months, most likely, because it would not only wipe out our grid, but
Mhm.
especially in North America and most places, our electrical grid's above ground.
Mhm.
And there's a certain type of fuel, I forget the substance, type of oil that they use on all these things to conduct electricity better. Funny thing is that oil is highly flammable, and if a corona
Mm.
mass ejection hits our planet, those things are going to go on fire, which means
Right.
it's a bad situation. So anyway, we had this coming towards our planet, and at the last minute, it bumped and
Ah,
shifted direction, and it went in between our moon and our planet. This was confirmed 2 years later by NASA in an article you can look up to this day on their website,
wow.
and they admitted that happened 2 years later. That we
Yeah.
missed. We were actually on perfectly timed, like the Mayan calendar, to have a cataclysmic end to our civilization, and it didn't happen.
Wow.
We're on
Wow.
borrowed time because we are looked after. There is absolutely people looking out for us, for sure,
Oh, yes, and that proves it more than anything, Chris. I mean, that's a near extinction event, you know?
right?
And that's like what, it's easy, like you say, to get depressed about the current events, and the world seems to be falling apart. And, but I always say, we must, especially those of us who are consciously on the spiritual path, to withdraw our attention from the outer, to gather inward, withdraw our attention from that. Yes, the epic battle between light and dark has raged on for millennia, reaching a height in ancient Atlantis and now in our time. But we are moving beyond the lessons of Atlantis and the technology of Atlantis. And we're moving way beyond that. So now this epic battle, I feel, is in its last gasps. Okay. And so as we move into the new earth frequency, which is always available to us, even if we can't see it so much in the physical, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't see, but it eventually will anchor on the physical plane. But the frequency is available to all of us to tap into, and we can live on the new earth now, to be in this world but not of it, as the ancient mystics modeled for us. And so I think that's part of our great work now. And this to more and more of us withdrawing our attention from the old timeline, which I call timeline B, which is collapsing before our very eyes. But you're right to say that we needed to look at that. We needed to confront that shadow, because it's our individual shadow, which is also the collective shadow. We all have that within us. So by acknowledging it and recognizing it for what it is, we integrate it and then we move beyond.
It's exactly it. That's shadow work 101, and we're
Right,
doing it, and we're doing it here, and that's fantastic. We're looking at the
right.
dark, but we're alchemizing it, and we're
Yes,
actually, it feels like what we're doing, we're in the growing pains right now of realizing how much of these old institutions and systems don't work anymore.
right.
And yeah, we're going through the grief phase, which means what's part of the grief phase? Well, anger is one of the
Yes.
phases of grief, and you can see that that is a very big emotion
Yep.
currently happening on our planet. However, my intuition continually tells me that this is a good sign. It means that we're moving through the old and we're recognizing what's not working, and we're coming together to just first of all acknowledge, like, wait a minute, we cannot continue the way we have, and that's a great realization.
Oh, huge. Yes,
Yeah.
the anger stage. That's so true and well put. It feels like we're moving through that. And what's the stage of grief after that? Is it resignation and then finally acceptance?
Acceptance.
And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we'll get to that and we'll see it in our lifetime. And I always say to people, yes, let's just withdraw our attention from timeline B and focus on timeline A, which is the ascension timeline. And it
Yeah.
has to happen, Chris, because we're moving into the new earth. Like you said, spirit has our back.
Yeah.
God has our back. We're protected and supported in ways that we can't imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, on that note, Dano, like, what keeps you going on your journey? What keeps you going on your mission? What is it that fuels you to teach what you teach, to help the people, and to take them to these incredible sacred sites?
Yes, really good question, Chris. I feel that it's my desire and my passion to be of service. I'm genuinely passionate about tuning into and sharing truth and connecting with ancient wisdom, which is wired within all of us, and bringing it forward as a fellow traveler on the path. So much of my work is about self mastery and self empowerment, because that's where we have to start, right? And it's also about embodying the wisdom of the heart, which through my experience and my travels, and yes, my deep spiritual inquiry and practice, has shown me that all roads lead back to the heart, which is the place of unity, the place where all of the opposites collapse and integrate. And when I say the heart, I don't mean the physical heart per se, but the heart center, the energetic center, and the high heart energetic center, which connects us to oneness, to unity consciousness, and, if you will, universal love for all that is beyond particular love. And this is the seat of our Christ presence and the launching pad of our ascension on our return path back to God. I feel, from what I've been shown and learned, and we're all infinite works in progress, it all begins here at the heart and high heart center. And so that's what fuels me, is to continue my own path of mastery. Like I say, we're infinite works in progress, and to really enjoy the fruits of my own labors and growth, and to see others also blossoming, and to assist in some way, with their self-empowerment on their path of mastery. It brings me a lot of joy.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's beautiful. And, it makes me now lead to this kind of more or less our last question of the episode here, which would be for the everyday person, who might be tuning into this episode
Mhm.
or knows people that are just more or less living the average human life right now, which is a challenging situation. It's not
Right,
easy to be a
right.
human, an average, a normal
An
human
average
on this
human life.
planet is
Yeah.
is is not an easy thing right now. And what would you say to humanity, but to the people watching and listening right now who might be struggling a little bit, who might be moving through some challenges,
Yeah.
and maybe just need a bit of guidance? And what have you found in general that has really helped you shift through challenging times yourself?
Mm, great. Well, I would say, and we touched on this earlier, for people to always know, like deep within yourselves, that there is always a higher guiding force conspiring on your behalf, no matter what your circumstances, as bleak as it may look, as much of the dark night of the soul you may be going through. And we've all gone through that or are going through it. Just know that you are so protected, loved, and supported by this higher guiding force. And what's helped me, Chris, is again to constantly, one of my foundational practices is to constantly shift my attention back to my heart and high heart centers, which connects me directly to my mighty I am presence, which is an electronic body of light that extends about an arm's length above the crown, if you want to visualize it, through a white tube of light. And then beyond that, the white tube of light extending from my own I am presence to the infinite I am, to spirit God. And so if we can just simply keep bringing our attention back to our heart centers, it's an ongoing moment by moment practice. It's actually an ancient Toltec practice called stalking oneself, STALKING. Where is your attention in every moment? That's all. Easier said than done, I know. Deceptively simple and yet profound. Bringing your attention always back to your heart center. We're human. We're going to be distracted. It's okay. We don't have to have the whip to our backs. To just give yourself a big pat on the back. You know, you've made it this far and you will continue, and you are so supported, and to always find and do what brings you the most joy. Again, simple as it may sound. We need more joy. Joy is the highest vibration we can hold, and it encompasses love. So those would be my words, final words.
Oh, that's beautiful, Dana. Thank
Yeah.
you. It is so true, just follow your joy. And that could look so different for so many people. I remember hearing a lovely story of a woman who needed to make some really big changes in her life, and she just didn't know how to start.
Mm-hmm.
But one day she got the download to just do the thing she used to do as a kid, which was figure skating. So she's decided to go figure skate every morning for like half an hour before her day started. That one simple little act that brought her so much joy and so much inner child bliss. Everything in her life changed after that, and it unraveled because she was able to
Wow.
find that joy in every day because of that small little act of skating.
Wow.
And so for our beautiful audience watching and listening, like what Dan is saying, and to find your joy, these are some fun ways you can do that. Like, think about when you were a kid, before you had all these insecurities and all these programs. What did you as a kid, you knew exactly how to play. You knew how to play, and you knew how to have joy. And we got to just come back to that. So any practices that bring your inner child into the equation, I find, are a pretty good way to bring in some joy. I don't know if you found the same, Dana.
That's a great story, Chris. I totally agree. And even if it's something as simple as I'm going to have an ice cream cone today. Yes, this childlike joy, and also try to visit some sacred sites. They're all around you. You don't have to go to far-flung places like Egypt and Machu Picchu. You can walk around in your backyard. You could feel various energy centers all around and take a walk through the woods. Everywhere you go is sacred. And if you're in the Northern California area, in Marin County in April, I'm giving a talk on the healing power of sacred sites at the New Living Expo, produced by Portal to Ascension, which was founded by Neil Gower. And I will also be in Glastonbury, Chris, which is a huge sacred site. This coming August 28th, I'll be giving a talk there at Portal to Ascension's Ascension Glastonbury event. So I'm very excited about both of them.
Yeah, and I'll be there as well for the audience. So it's going to be, so I'll get to meet you, Dan, in real life.
In person.
Yeah, wonderful. It'll be really fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, Glastonbury is very special. I was so fortunate last summer. I got to perform at the music festival there, and what a powerful, like, healing land. It's just very special place. So definitely come check us out there, everybody watching and listening. And just lastly, Dana, where can people connect with you? Where can they get in contact with you?
Yes, they could go to my website, which is danamicucci.com, DANAMICUCCI.com. And you'll read about upcoming sacred journeys, I'm doing a retreat in Wyoming, closer to home for those in the U.S., at Grand Teton National Park, which is an etheric retreat of the Ascended Masters. I'm doing that at the end of July. And I mentioned I'm taking a group to Peru and Bolivia in October of this year. And you can read also about my books. You can order my books through my website, also on Amazon, and my healing sessions. I have a private healing and mentoring practice, and I've been trained in shamanic healing over many years. So one of my specialties is shamanic soul retrievals. So you can find out all of that on my website, danamicucci.com.
Amazing. That's so great. And as always, everybody, it's going to be in the show notes below. So check it out, the links and all that to Dana's amazing work and her sacred site tours, which, as someone who's doing them myself, you got to go check hers out because they sound incredible. Peru, what an amazing mecca, obviously, to be going to. And that's going to be so powerful. So everybody definitely go check that out for sure. Dana, thank you so much for being on this episode. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all your incredible work, your wisdom, your love, your heart, your high hearts, and all your beautiful energy. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for the same in you. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Thank
I appreciate you too. Thank you so much. What a great episode, everybody. Wow. Thank you so much to Dana Miccucci. That was just another great, enlightening episode. As always, I love our guests that we get to have on here, and especially from a fellow sacred site tour leader. And, well, let's face it, her and I are clearly both addicted to these sacred sites, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great addiction to have, a very healthy one. So on that note, if you want to come join Dana on her trip, definitely check out her information below in October. The month before, I'll be in Egypt. So if you want to check out that trip, links below for that as well. And as I always mention, we're sponsored by the Therapeutic Music Library, which is essentially just a whole plethora of therapeutic music that practitioners, therapists, and any professionals can use legally in their practice. So check out the link below if that resonates with you and you want to bring some healing frequencies into your clients or your patient's life. Please go ahead and check out the link below. And otherwise, like Dana was mentioning, we've got the New Living Expo coming up with Portal to Ascension and amazing speakers, amazing people. Honestly, the New Living Expo would be the spiritual party of the year, if you want to call it that, more of like a festival. And it's just going to be a great place for you to network and meet your favorite, your favorite peeps that you might see online, like yours truly, or Dana, or many, many more, of course. So without any further ado, that's the end of this episode today. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Sending you so much love out there to the rest of the world, to the cosmos and beyond. And we will see you in the next episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Until next time.